Welcome to Mudville, podcast about baseball and cinema. I'm Brody Staub.
I'm Nolan Rabine.
We hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody, to another remote edition of Mudville. My co-host Brody is still in White Plains hosting a Bigfoot convention. But fear not, he won't miss a single episode. Brody, how have you been?
We're still on the hunt. No, we have not gotten him yet. He's out there. Everyone knows he's out there. We're gonna get him.
It's gonna be any day now. What kind of weapons did you guys bring?
Well, last time we brought like spears and knives and stuff. So we're trying to upgrade the arsenal this week.
That didn't work, clearly, or else you wouldn't be back.
The visual or the thermal imaging that really feels like it's gonna bring us. So that's what that's what our sights are set on now.
Well, good luck, man. I think you got him.
I appreciate the confidence. What's going on, man? How's everything been?
It's been going on. My new edition of CinemaScope just came in the mail today, so that was nice. I get to meet Bob the Cat tomorrow. Brody's actually coming back to the apartment tomorrow night, but I'm going to be gone. So here we are, and
it's fine. Last week was fine, right? It works.
Oh, absolutely. I think last week was a major success. We had a great episode, a little formally interesting. We kind of didn't do that on purpose, but we had an hour with Nick and then an hour with your brother, Morgan, and I think a lot of information with the draft recap, so if anybody hasn't heard that yet, definitely check that out. And then, we had a fun conversation with your brother Morg. So I think we're going to do a little bit of a shorter episode this week. I wanted to start us off today by reading the game notes from Coors Field as the Colorado Rockies took on the Houston Astros today. It says, using a stethoscope to listen to the heart, cardiologists can detect narrow valves, valve leakage, and/or abnormal rhythm. Don't bother asking him to check your heart, though, Becky. That crushed Titanic sub has more life inside it than that collapsed troll cave you call a chest cavity.
So that's like just the most normal person ever.
Tough day for Becky. Dude, I think Jumbotrons have been used in a positive manner for far too long, and it's time to start letting people just air out their personal grievances, no matter how small or petty.
Psychopaths should have access to large screens that are capable of providing giant information. I think that would make the world an inherently more interesting place.
It has to be interesting. It can't just be some bullshit like some lady cut me in line at the store. It has to be something like juicy. You got to give the people something to work with. Like if you want to roast Becky,
heartless Becky,
like this guy did.
That's right, troll cape. Which, by the way, this is what I'm talking about. This feels like it was like a product of the writer's strike and just someone who is now bored. Because that's way too perfect. The collapsed troll cave.
It's pretty excellent prose. I started wondering when I saw it if Becky was actually a real person. Because, I don't know too many Beckys nowadays. I feel like it's
thinking the same thing.
It's kind of become the name that it's, reference when you want to talk about an annoying white girl. I feel like most prospective Beckys, I think, just go by Rebecca because that's, a much better name. If your name is Karen, it's over. But Becky's, I think, they have the out. Really they can go by Rebecca.
Also, if your name is Joe, it's Jover.
Imagine Alfred Hitchcock's Becky. That movie would suck. A woman shows up to her new husband's mansion, and she can't live up to how quirky his ex-wife was. Becky. Dun, dun, dun. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about. Where have you actually been, aside from hunting Bigfoot?
That's right. I forgot I haven't even said. So I've been working at a camp in my hometown. I'm working as a combo counselor / assistant director / director when need be.
You're hanging out with a lot of kids these days.
A lot of kid jobs, man. Yeah. They're hiring. Nobody wants to take care of kids right now. Yeah. So they're all
I
open
certainly don't.
open spots. Yeah, I guess so. So, they're all paying relatively well and have job
Mudville is for the
openings.
children.
It's not, but apparently
I think,
my
well,
like,
I mean, they probably shouldn't
somewhere.
listen, but I would say, in general,
In
Mudville
general,
is
look, if you're actually,
supportive
there are some
of
kids in this
the
camp who would
idea of the
probably be into
children.
they
Like, I
yeah,
don't
there are definitely
particularly
kids in
want to,
this
like,
camp who would be
talk
into
to
it. There's some
them
baseball fans, football
or
fans.
be around them, but I do support them. Like, we should definitely, like, feed and house and clothe and teach all the kids because they are
Especially
our
kids.
future. I just don't
Oh
want
yeah.
to be the one to do it, you know?
That's that's fair. I have filled the role
Other
now at this
people are
point.
out there doing that. I see them all the time.
Yeah, that's
They've got
I'm
it
one of them.
covered.
I don't know if I have it covered. I try. There was some kids going over the IMDb list of the like the 100 highest rated movies or whatever. Like in like the best possible way. This kid was had comments on the strangest movies on the list. Like he would go through like what the a good example was like at first he was like why is The Godfather 2 ranked higher than The Godfather 1? I was like, see, that makes sense. That makes sense. You wouldn't
Well,
know
embrace
that.
debate.
Like
That's kind of like
everybody
the
says,
eternal question about that. Like
I know, but like
I
it's
would
very,
rewatch both of
very,
those movies and
well established.
reevaluate.
Godfather 2 better than Godfather 1, right? I think it's like a common thread. I don't think people would like fight back against it. Like if you said it, like you could have a debate. I don't think anyone would call you nuts, but
Sure. Did
I
this
think
kid
Godfather
like
2 is
seem
pretty
to
much well
have
regarded as
much
being better.
knowledge of like Godfather 1? Like or was he just
No, I don't
like
think he's
I
seen
knew
either of
of the Godfather. What's this Godfather 2 you speak of?
Right. No, I don't think he had seen either of them. But that's part of why this was like so strange. Some of the other things, like I think like Gone with the Wind came up and he was talking about Gone with the Wind and he was like, "Oh, great movie, like Gone
Oh
with the
boy.
Wind." Yeah. And then Some Like It Hot, he had seen that. He
Okay.
had seen
I haven't even
Apocalypse
seen Gone with the
Now.
Wind. Like I've
It's
just kind of have no
Apocalypse
interest
Now.
in
He had
that.
seen
I love Apocalypse Now.
what
One of the
else?
great
Pan's
American
Labyrinth.
movies.
I'm trying to think what else was on this
Sure.
list. Wait, let me see
Well,
if I can
this
find
seems
it.
like a cool kid. You
No,
should take him
he's,
under your
he's very
wing.
cool. It's just like there was just some that I was like, man, he hadn't seen The Dark Knight.
Oh my,
I was like,
whoa.
I was like, all
That
right.
goes
And then like
against
The Lord of the Rings
everything
was
I
on
know
here,
about
which
kids.
yeah, kids love Batman, man. But I was surprised.
It,
Like hadn't seen like Interstellar, hadn't seen a lot of the war movies, which is fine. They don't really need to see that until they're
yeah, no,
like, you know,
we don't
sink
need
in as being terrifying and not like fun war stuff. But
we don't need to
let me
put war in the heads of the kids.
no,
It's
they don't
fucked
need
up.
that. Oh, hadn't seen Whiplash. I was like, you need to watch Whiplash. I
Wow.
also found the list
What about
that
like
I was
Pulp
talking about.
Fiction or Inglorious Bastards? Like, are the kids these days like still
Hadn't
into
seen
Quentin
Inglourious
Tarantino?
Basterds.
Oh man.
I told them one of them had because it was two kids really, but one of them
Okay.
was the one who had like everything like the 50s and 60s and 70s apparently was being like exposed to. So the one that really got me though is when the 1981 German U-boat flick Das Boot came up. He was like, "Oh, good movie." I was like,
Oh
"What are
my
you watching?"
god.
I was like, "All right, good for you." He was like Eternal
Oh
Sunshine. He
no.
liked that one, I think. I was like Braveheart. He loved Braveheart. He's like huge, big fan of Braveheart. I was like,
Big
all
Mel
right.
Gibson guy. I'm not going to go so far as to say 12-year-olds shouldn't know what Das Boot is, but a 12-year-old who had never heard of Inglorious Bastards and has never seen The Dark Knight probably shouldn't be skipping straight to Das Boot. Like you're skipping levels like 1 through 6
There's
there, and those are pretty
there's
important
some
levels.
accessible material in there that you're allowed to watch. You don't
Yeah,
need to go straight to Das Boot.
like that I
Man.
think is the context in which I'm most defensive of like Tarantino or directors who like when young kids are like getting into movies and they start identify patterns like in these easily identifiable
Sure.
directors like, and then I think that is a great gateway drug. Tarantino, that leads you to Scorsese, and then Scorsese leads you to John Ford. Maybe I'm even skipping a couple steps. John Ford leads you to Hawks and Chaplin and Keaton, and then you're into the classics, you know? So I think
Sure.
that has always been a pathway into cinephilia that a lot of people have taken. There are a lot of valid criticisms of directors like that. But I do think that it's very important to like establish that so many people, like millennials, I think especially, found their love of movies through a lot of these guys.
Having seen these, this specifically this kid, but in general, kids being exposed to films that are not only, Marvel stuff, it gives you a little hope of like, maybe, hey, they can appreciate some things that are, I don't know, subtle and nuanced. But I will say most of these kids too, I don't think the thing about working all these jobs that I've found really interesting is figuring out what they are aware of and into. And weirdly enough, and I'm not trying to just say this because it ties into the podcast, but they're really into baseball. Like a
Ooh.
lot of them are really into baseball, and it's like it makes me really happy. Like I was talking with, okay, so today is a great example. Today I went to a Frontier League game with the camp. Reading through some of the bios, like a lot of these guys were old, farm hands for a lot of major league clubs, or they played in college, and some of them clearly still want to make it and figure out a way up. And there was a guy on the Gateway Grizzlies. We walked down to like the edge of the dugout, which that was the nice thing about this game. We were walking around between the seats that were right next to both dugouts. Like so we were going back and forth talking to players and like whatever, like asking for balls and all these things. And the kids were really into it. And then one of them was this guy Josh Lucas, who actually pitched in the majors a few times. Like he has well, let me see, his 22 career games in the majors for like the Cardinals. Let me see. His the Cardinals, the who else? The A's and the Orioles. So pretty good guy for the immaculate grid. But
Absolutely. Dude, I got
yeah.
a rarity score of 56 today.
Ooh,
I was very proud of
that's
that.
pretty good. Wait, but I was
Oh,
gonna
okay,
say
yeah, go
these
ahead.
kids were really like excited by the fact that this guy was like in the majors net like years ago, not years ago, but relatively a while ago, like 2019. It looks like
Sure.
his last appearance was. And I was like, this dude is in he's playing Frontier League baseball, and these kids are like excited about it and like getting to meet him and all these things. And I was like, man, that's kind of nice. They were like, who did he play for? Like, what was his deal? Like they wanted to know his numbers and like it was kind of fun. And then they were also like asking who everybody was and like where'd they play or they in any systems or whatever. It was nice. They're like really into it. It was cool.
Warms your heart, man.
It
Kids
does.
talking about
Baseball's
baseball, getting
baseball's in a good
excited,
place.
watching Das
The
Boot,
youngest.
dude. That's
Watching
what
Das
that's
Boot
what
and
they're
talking
into
to
these
old
days.
Oakland farmhand.
The kids are all right.
It's like eat hot chip and lie. It's like watch Das
Watch Das Boot
and Frontier
and
baseball.
Frontier League baseball. I would love it. We
Right.
got a little action movie recap this week on Mudville. I saw the new Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I thought was a lot of
That's a
fun.
fucking hard
Dude,
title.
right? Going into last week, I had only seen the first two entries in the Mission Impossible series, so I watched 3 and Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout in the span of like 4 or 5 days. And then I went to the theater, saw it in IMAX. The only thing I didn't like was that I didn't exactly pick the ideal seat in regards to people walking in the aisle obstructing my view of the
Oh
screen.
no,
So that was a little
that's not
bit
great.
disappointing. But it is what it is. I had a great time. Tom Cruise is on like a one-man mission to save the movies from this corporate entity, both in the movie and in real life, apparently.
Okay,
And
but is he
it,
though? Like, how much do you really trust Tom Cruise's intentions when it comes to making stuff like this?
I trust that Tom Cruise loves making movies and having movies be a thing more than he likes anything else that has ever existed in the world. And
That I
he
think
rightfully sees streaming as a threat to that. and he is on a one-man mission. He has entered this period of his career where he's making like metatextual movies about how he is like the last movie star, and anybody else doing that would be like absolute narcissistic bullshit. But it's worked now 2 years in a row, both with Top Gun Maverick last year and now with this new Mission Impossible. Like, David Ehrlich of IndieWire said in his review, the plot of this movie is literally an AI entity determines that Tom Cruise is the only one who can stop it, and it must kill him at all costs. And it's directed by Chris McQuarrie, who has made the last three of these movies now. I kind of liked what they did before, where it would be a different director every time. Like the first one was Brian De Palma, who we've talked about on here a little bit before. The second was John Woo, so you would get like each of these guys' respective styles, and then you have J.J. Abrams, so not much discernible style. But then lately they've handed it to Chris McQuarrie, and he's making these increasingly dangerous collaborations with. I think it was because he was involved with Lost for a while, and then like I remember when Super 8 came out, like it was a really big deal, and I didn't see it because like I wasn't, when I was a kid, I wasn't like super into movies. Like I've had to catch up so much like in the past like 6 years. I remember like Super 8 being a big thing when it came out, and like people were talking about it, and like J.J. Abrams, and like ooh. People were talking about him like the next Christopher Nolan, at least in my like 12-year-old memory. So the cast of these movies, like he has his crew, and which is Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, Rebecca Ferguson has been in the last few movies. Jeremy Renner, it's actually the most that I think I've ever liked Jeremy Renner in a role, especially in Ghost Protocol. Like usually I find, you know, if
didn't he almost die?
Yeah, he ran himself over with a snowplow, and everybody was acting like he survived 9/11. They were like, "You are a hero, and we love you." And it was like he literally he'd like Mr. Plowed himself. I feel like Jeremy Renner is kind of like the weird mailman in a lot of the movies that I've seen him in. But I did really like him in especially Ghost Protocol a lot. I thought his character brought, although the plot in that movie will involve, I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there's like this whole convoluted thing about him and his past arc involving Ethan's wife, and in like the third, fourth, and fifth movies, we have no idea if Ethan's wife is alive or dead. Either because we're not supposed to know, or we're intentionally misled, or she's just been written out completely. And then, but I will say they salvaged that quite well in the Sick movie, and the action, of course, throughout is remarkable. Tom Cruise seems dedicated to be a man that dies making a movie, kills himself performing a stunt.
I feel like he will. I think if there's anybody alive right now who's going to die on a movie set.
And I respect him all the more for it. I guess to summarize, the Mission Impossible movies, aptly titled. Do we have to see Sound of Freedom, do you think?
What is Sound of Freedom?
Oh, you don't know about it yet?
No, I've heard about it. It's the freaking I don't know. It's the psycho right wing.
Yeah, it's a movie that stars Jim Caviezel, who is a huge QAnon guy. Is still alive? Yeah, and it's about him saving children from being sex trafficked. I've listened to a few podcasts about it that have covered it quite extensively. Like, I don't really have any interest in watching this movie. I don't see how it could provide any value to me. Yeah. I have had a few people that have asked me like about this movie, just like in conversation, just like regular people who assume it's just like some huge movie. And from what I understand about it, it's not like explicitly like QAnon. Like, from what I understand, QAnon is more like the idea that the elites and primarily Democrats are like harboring children in like tunnels and like eating them for energy or some shit. And there isn't any of that in this movie. It's just Jim Caviezel taking on like regular, normal sex traffickers, not any of the DC people, I guess. I don't know. But it's attracted such a huge like right-wing crowd of these people who have suddenly decided that human trafficking is this like huge problem.
Okay, but like it is a problem, but like not like where it needs to devour every waking second that you have. Like
Yeah. It's like
you can be
priority number
anti-human
27
trafficking
probably.
and like kind of just leave it at that. It's
Yeah.
like everyone's like, cool, me too. Like
My not involved in human trafficking shirt caused a ruckus at the premiere of this movie. If anything like skeeves me out about this, it's the idea that like regular people, moviegoers, will go into this not knowing that it's like a very thinly veiled QAnon op, essentially, like without being able to go as far as that.
AstroTurf now?
Absolutely.
Like
Right-wing organizations were buying out screenings of this showing, and all that resulted in was people like showing up and then filming the theaters and being like, they said it was sold out and there's nobody here, like as if they would have gotten something out of making this movie like a huge hit, but not having anyone actually in the theaters. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what the logic behind that would be.
If I was running a theater, I'd make sure that I had a bunch of screenings for it and was like, man,
it's a hilarious way to find out that this movie has been astroturfed. It's certainly not the first time that there's been like a right-wing Christian blockbuster that's like made a bunch of money, or movies that have explicitly like targeted this market of like midwestern right-wingers who like don't really have any knowledge of like what is happening with movies and just want to like see something that appeals to what they already believe. There are people like Kevin Sorbo, for example, who have made a career making these shitty knockoff movies without directors, and like he makes a killing just because it's like these people who are so convinced that like Hollywood is out to get them and that everyone's a liberal, and then they're like, oh, and then there's this guy, he's just fighting for the nice patriotic Americans or whatever the fuck.
Who's the one now? Was it Scott Bakula or
no, Scott Baio? Scott Bakula's innocent. He was the one that was insane.
We ran into Bakula. He's trying to steal our leap.
Of course, all of these people now are becoming ultra paranoid, of course, because of this movie, and going around into like grocery stores and shit and confronting the parents of crying children, being like, is this your kid? Did you steal this kid? And like,
yeah, I heard about this.
I can't imagine that the success of this movie is doing anything to prevent actual sex trafficking. Like, I can't imagine anyone involved in that and even like knows that it exists.
Some chud walk up to you like, are you a sex trafficker?
Right-wing media has done to these people's brains. It's very fair to judge, at least partially judge, a movie on the impact it has on the people who watch it and the world at large. And when you're getting mothers of infant children harassed in grocery stores, I would say your movie has resulted in a net negative.
Negative on the culture. How would you define the word chud?
Chud? I mean, I can give you like what I picture. Like
pop movie is up there.
I picture like a guy who has a thick neck and like a neck beard
and a tank top.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say like a white T-shirt, maybe with like a Anheuser-Busch logo and like a stain, but it's like not a stain from something he was. Oh no, also a flag tattoo. He would have that as well, and then on his left calf he has a tattoo of like Porky Pig or something.
That's good. That's good.
and it says,
Definitely like
"That's all,
really
folks."
dumb
But
sunglasses. Like baseball player sunglasses that always look weird when they're not being worn by a baseball player who's actively playing baseball.
oh yeah, he's wearing Oakleys, but he hasn't actually ran since 2007. He pulls up in his jorts, socks and sandals, but like one of the socks is kind of like pulled down all the way.
There's a
Um,
hole in the toe.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of his toes is like poking out.
Yeah.
Um,
Dude. All right. So if we just described you, like, sorry, but like,
Listen, if we just described you and you have no interest in seeing the movie Sound of Freedom, you're probably fine.
that's true. I think there's a mentality to being a chud. That it's not
Absolutely.
just your appearance. It's who
Like
you are as a person.
Chud is not a purely aesthetic notion. It
Right. There's a whole philosophy aspect of chudness that we have not dove into.
Chud is a very philosophical term. It's not one that can be brought to a science, but I do think it's one that can be loosely defined. And I think it's one that is also very
It's how the Supreme
ideologically
Court defined
based,
pornography in
if
the
you know what
the
I'm saying.
70s or the
Yeah.
80s.
I know it when I see it.
You know when you see it. Yeah.
Absolutely. The last thing that I'll say about this movie is it's like a very open secret that a lot of the appeal of it is this unspoken implication that this human trafficking is like sex trafficking being done by the elites and the politicians and shit, which is probably true. But these people, the audience who are going to see Sound of Freedom, their ideas of like pedophile cabals are Hillary Clinton and like the Democratic National Convention
Right.
or whatever, because right-wing media has become so linked to like InfoWars bullshit that a movie like this that claims to be, ostensibly good, like fighting for the right things and like wanting to save these kids or whatever, it just like ends up being thinly veiled propaganda for people who think Barack Obama eats lizards and Joe Biden is
Yeah.
installing a secret communist revolution.
Dude, this is like it's going down the exact same vein of the things that led to the pizza shop getting like I don't remember if it got shot up or someone just brought a gun in there, but like innocent people almost got
Yeah, no,
shot.
I know what you mean. Like
Like
shit like that happens all the
unfortunate
time.
people.
Right wing vigilantes with guns are like the single most dangerous demographic in the country, but you would never hear
Yeah.
that based in anywhere. But you're hearing it right now on the
We
Mudville
tell the real
podcast.
truth
You
here on
heard
the
it here
Monday. No,
first.
I think most people are aware of that. I think it's just like,
Yeah, I
corporate
don't want to have to see Sound of Freedom. I'm certainly not going to go see it in theaters. I feel like not interested in that. I feel
Well,
like
honestly, maybe
it's
we
a
should
hazardous
walk into a show
situation.
and not buy a ticket.
Yeah, and then see if it's
All
like
the tickets are already bought
sold
anyway,
out but
so.
completely empty. Like I don't know
Yeah.
if it's gonna take up a place in like the zeitgeist of regular people. Like I probably have to see it because if those people are going to be in terrible hands, like QAnon psychos, I don't know. I'm gonna put some sort of moral responsibility onto myself to like be aware of what that is. You know,
What they're talking about. Well, the
you
thing
can give
is,
me a
too, with
round
the
of
name, like,
applause.
literally ringing a bell for these people to go and like, to like group up and take in their newest prop. Like,
Yeah, it's called Sound of Freedom, not The Sound of Freedom,
right.
presumptively because they didn't want to be confused with The Sound of Music, which would be really funny.
Very similar films.
Oh, yeah. Double feature next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Both starring what's her name too. So
Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews, thank you.
Yeah, star of The Sound of Freedom. She's
Yeah.
going to be in the next one. She's going to help Jim Caviezel, and they're also going to get Mel Gibson for this one.
Right.
Speaking of which,
It's gonna be InfoWars the movie.
yeah, like I'm super cautious about what like this is going to lead to with these predatory film financiers trying to like make a quick buck and like stir up more of these awful
Oh, don't even I didn't
ideas
even
and
think
like
about
link.
that. The producers now have a whole new like cash cow. All you have to do is make some like piece of shit propaganda movie. And all of a sudden you'll have like all the evangelicals gathering up their buddies and going down to the theater on a Sunday and being like
Cockroaches.
Yep.
It's
We're
disgusting.
going to see the American flag bell ringer is here to stay or whatever. I, don't know. I
Again,
saw Indiana Jones 5.
number 5. Okay, yeah, talk about that.
Indiana
I'm.
Jones
I
5.
honestly have. I don't know too much about Indiana Jones. I saw number 4 when I was a kid. I went to see it in theaters. I had never seen
Is that the only
any of the
one you've
first
seen?
ones. I have since seen Raiders, which was fun. It was a good time. I don't exactly
Yeah.
remember too much of what happened in it. I've never seen
That's the one
Temple
with
of
the base is
Doom.
melting at the end.
Yeah, I've never seen
Yeah.
whatever the third one is. So yeah,
That is
this is gonna be your jurisdiction. I'm gonna bow out of
sure.
Indiana Jones. Hit it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a huge Indiana Jones guy. I've seen the first one and the third one. And then I have seen, I saw the fourth one too when I was a kid because it came out and it was like, I was like 12 and everyone was like, we have to go see the Indiana Jones, even though nobody like knew anything about it.
Sure.
But this one, I saw it for work with the camp, and I actually liked it. Like I was kind of surprised. I'm like the only person I think who liked this movie, but I learned a few things about myself. Number one, I love a race to treasure between two like adversaries who have like fun, witty banter with each other the whole time.
Okay.
And the reason that I have that, I think, is because I love Uncharted, and it was basically just like an Uncharted movie, but with Harrison Ford, which I enjoyed very much.
Did you watch the
And then
actual Uncharted movie?
no, I have not seen the actual Uncharted movie because that's not an Uncharted
I heard it
movie.
was terrible.
It has Tom Holland, and I don't need that, and also freaking Marky Mark. I don't
Oh
need
yeah.
any of that in my Uncharted. I don't
You
need
know
to
what's
ruin
weird
that
to
and put myself.
think about? I have to hear about Tom Holland so much. I don't think I have ever seen him in a movie other than Infinity War and Endgame, in which he was just like one of 300 people.
I
Um,
saw
I've
a
never seen any
couple
of
of
his
the.
like Spider-Man movies. I didn't see his Uncharted. I didn't watch his Russo brothers Cherry shit that I heard was awful.
I
Like
didn't see
it
that.
doesn't seem like he's ever been in anything good.
I
But
don't really think he has. Like those
yeah,
Spider-Man movies are like fine,
I don't
but
know.
he's just
Like
like,
he
why
might be
is
a
he
good
such a
actor. I have
big
no
deal?
idea.
But yeah, I think I'm like kind of the only person who liked this movie. It was a bit too long, but also like the action pieces were great. I thought like the I was kind of surprised at how good like the car chases were and good use of like improvised weaponry. Just like, fun things that like, you watch it and you're like, "Oh, that's fun." Like that's a little different. You've seen so many action movies. It's like whenever one can kind of make you think like, "Oh, I don't know if I've seen that before." It's done its job, so I thought that, it actually did do that a few times. So I was like, "All right, good enough."
Yeah, it
Fun
is
stuff.
directed by James Mangold, quite the accomplished director. Made Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic. Directed Logan. Recently, Ford versus
Sure.
Ferrari. He's doing the upcoming Bob Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet. So, not
Dude, he did
really a
like dad
straight
movies.
line that I
That's
can
sick.
connect between those five, but yeah, definitely a
I
very
can. I
competent
just
and
did.
fun director. What is it?
The dude makes dad movies.
Yeah, he totally makes dad movies. It's true.
He
James
just makes
Mangold,
dad movies.
your
It's kind of
dad's
fun.
favorite
Good for
director.
Yeah, your dad also definitely does not know his name.
Your dad's favorite director who he's never heard of.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But if you were like, but he made these movies, you'd be like, oh, well, yeah.
I also went to see my favorite movie in a theater this week. I got to see
Oh,
Inherent Vice. Yeah, I went to
how was that?
Metrograph, and I had a great time. It actually wasn't the first time I had ever been to see it in theaters. Back in 2019, I went with a friend to see a double feature of Inherent Vice and Altman's The Long Goodbye. And we had like a mandatory school-wide like meeting that night that we forgot about, and we had to miss the first like hour of Inherent Vice, and we were so mad about that. But we had already seen it, so like we got over it, and we got to watch all of The Long Goodbye, which I had never seen, and I had quite a good time with that. And of course, I enjoyed it again this time. It's a movie that you know of as being dense, and you know of as thinking like following the plot isn't like the main appeal of this, but it would be nice. And rewatches of this have certainly helped me understand it.
Dude, I need
And
to like rewire my brain to watch that movie.
right,
Just 'cause,
it's
like
it's really
it's
like
different.
singular. Pynchon had never been adapted for the screen before that, and I
How
think
could you? It's like
yeah, no,
impossible to do.
exactly.
Like,
And I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson kind of did the impossible with it, and he made just a really incredible movie that I love so much, and I will rewatch endlessly. And that is it's
I
just
wonder if
very
Pynchon
important to
even
me.
knows. I wonder if Pynchon even knows that that movie exists.
There's a rumor that he's in it for like a second or something, but nobody has ever been able to even find like what the theory
No one
is
knows what he looks
for it.
like.
Like
So
I think like Josh Brolin said something about him being like slightly involved or something. Like he certainly, I bet like PTA has had several conversations with him like throughout the years and has just
probably,
never said anything about that because
right.
that'd be a very PTA move.
He's like a hermit, right? Or at least not a hermit, but just
He's a recluse, yeah.
recluse.
He
That's the word.
doesn't give interviews at all. Like he's
Yeah.
never
He also
like
just might not want like any kind of public life, which I completely would understand. Like
totally get
for
it. Like the
yeah.
only known
For
picture of him was from like 1950 at Cornell, which is
There's
wild.
one more that they think is him, but there's no way to prove it, I
Yeah,
think. But
he's looking like Dumbledore.
yeah. Kind of looks
uh,
like you a little bit.
I don't know about that.
Like in the old man one. Not saying that you look like an old man. I'm just saying he has like I don't know, just like the thin face kind of. I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know what it
know.
is. Uh,
Maybe.
yeah,
But hey,
something about it. But
Inherent Vice,
yeah,
just endlessly quotable movie, like line after line of just perfect deliveries. Like everybody's in the zone. Like one thing that I always tend to say whenever I watch The Master is like this is the perfect example of a movie in which everyone involved is just firing on all cylinders. And like
I just looked at this picture. You don't look like Thomas Pynchon.
okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad we could clear that up.
Never mind. I take it back.
Okay. Thank you. You do look
Man,
like Josh Rosen, though, the former quarterback.
I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Um,
that one goes back. It's a deep cut.
that is a bit of a deep cut. Yeah. Yeah, just my favorite movie. If you haven't seen it, absolutely watch it. If you've only seen it once and you were like, that was okay, I didn't really know what was happening, absolutely watch it again. I had the same reaction the first time I saw it when I was like 19. I watched it again and again, and like I said, I think it's my favorite movie in the world, even though that changes every day. It's certainly in the
Dude,
conversation.
that you have, I think now at this point said that for so long that it has been. I think it's getting locked in there.
It's
I
probably
think you're kind of
official.
like.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just
I think
it's so
you're
good.
at the point where you'd have to bring it up forever now if
Yeah,
somebody asked you what your favorite is.
I think that's true. um,
You couldn't change it later on.
what else we have for this week? Philly's doctor has recommended Andrew Painter for Tommy John surgery,
Oh,
which
yeah.
incredibly frustrating considering that he was diagnosed with a UCL tear back in March, and they decided that it was the part
No.
of the ligament where they hoped that they could just ignore it, despite the fact that he was a then 19-year-old pitching prospect who was favored to crack the starting rotation out of spring training, had his timeline delayed when they could have just gotten the surgery and had him ready for maybe like May or June of 2024. Instead, they
Dude, he's
prolonged
not
it
4 months.
months. They made him keep throwing. They really didn't handle it well in hopes that he would be able to return this season, and now they've probably cost him all of his 2024 season as well. And it makes me very sad to see a player like that go down for so long. He was one of the guys that I was the most excited about coming into the year, and the fact that we're now not going to see him. He'll only be 21 or 22 at the time, so like that's still going to be presumably the number 1 or 2 pitching prospect in the game when he eventually returns. But my God, is it depressing to see Tommy John after all of this saga with him.
Dude, when I first got that update, I remember like yelling through the door. I thought it was like confirmed that he was going to be getting the surgery at the time. I couldn't believe that they went this long. Like he's so young, just you have to just do it. I think at that age, like it's
Yeah,
brutal, but I mean, there's no point in waiting. If you're that young, you just kind of have to like everyone has to get it once. And maybe
yeah.
now this means that he won't have to get it for like another 10 years or something like DeGrom. But
You'd
like
hope.
yeah, you'd hope, but I think it's like all these pitchers get it at least one time. It feels like so.
Yeah,
I
it
can you
it
even think of guys
certainly.
who haven't had it? Like,
It seems like you can like name them on one hand these days, but it definitely plays
I,
into the idea of like young pitchers having. You just have to assume that like a year and a half is going to be taken out of some point in time. The fact that
did
they
Garrett Cole ever get Tommy John?
I don't think so, but he could have earlier in his career. I have never heard it associated with his name before. Like I don't know
Right.
that he's a guy who like necessarily exerts more than league average, so maybe he hasn't been as like susceptible to it. But it's the guys like DeGrom, the ones who were topping at like 96, 97, and are now throwing 102 and can't stay healthy. Like it's the guys who are just overthrowing, and it's very possible that Andrew Painter had been overthrowing for a while. But with a guy like that,
Right.
especially, it just sucks that you're turning your lost year into a lost 2 years now, and we're not going to see him until 2025.
Cole had shoulder issues the same year that Tyone got Tommy John while on the Pirates, which is kind of funny.
Huh. That is interesting.
Weird. Yeah. Huh. Anyway, I think right now, you know what, I want to do the Yankees just because I feel it and
Do
I
you
need
want
to
to
just get it out
just
of
yeah,
my system.
that's fine. Do you want to
I just need to flush
you
it.
can vent.
It's to the point that I don't care.
Me too.
And that is so much
So sad.
more pathetic than being mad or
Mhm.
sad or angry or I don't care. Like, and
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio last week and they were like, do Yankee fans even like the team or do they just like the winning? It's like, that's not fair because we have been sold this brand our whole life that they care just as much as we do. And it doesn't feel like that anymore.
That they were
So it's
like
not
the
even like I'm
team
rooting
that
for the
that
same
would
team anymore.
go above and beyond to win. And like I don't even think that I like the idea of like a team that has more money and can like buy more players or whatever. And that's what the Yankees were for so long. But the fact that they have
Right.
just turned into this strange like fiscally conservative era where they're like bringing in these weird freak businessmen to like run the team,
Get
and they've
around the
given
edges. It's
Brian
like, well,
Cashman this unprecedented job security. He has literally held his job as general manager since before I was born, and it's resulted in one championship over the
yep.
past 20 years. We've talked about it in the past. Like, I don't want to be like one of those
Yep.
people that's like, oh, you're not winning, and I'm like, where, whatever.
One.
The fact that there has been so much ineptitude over the past like 3 to 5 years, especially, that has never
Uh,
been addressed or even questioned. It feels like it just feels like there's so much complacency within all levels of the organization. We've talked about it before, but I felt so alienated as a Yankees fan, especially the thing I've said time and time again, and will probably continue to, when they showed the 2004 ALCS video. I just felt like that was the straw that would eventually break the camel's back, and I think it's been a very procedural and gradual breaking, but that back has finally fractured, and it is so clear now that everything that the Yankees and Brian Cashman have tried to do, people are finally realizing that this idea of replacing veterans with other veterans and pouring a lot of money into very short-term outlets that don't end up panning out is not a winning strategy. And the teams who are set up the best for the future, and the teams, some of which who are winning already, who are succeeding much faster than they ever expected to, are the teams who have developed talent and really invested in scouting and who have worked to really develop as an organization and not just like thrown money at these weird veterans that don't produce anyway. Like, it's a weird complaint to make about a team that we have never seen have a losing season, but it feels like they've chosen eternal mediocrity over a chance to build something that could lead to more long-term success. Like, they need to start thinking of Judge and Cole as the old guys before the window with them ends, because they do have the talent to retool and make it happen like next year or the next year after that. Like, they're the Yankees. They can absolutely do that. But the fact that they have just shown such little life all year and have just looked so bad, it's just so clear that they need to sell and that they need to replace a lot of their front office, and just that changes need to be made. And I think there are a lot of teams in a similar situation. Like, the Padres and the Mets threw so much money at rosters in the offseason, and they both are like well under 500. Like, obviously the Cardinals are doing terrible. There's been a lot of pain around a lot of fan bases this year, I think. And a lot of like northeastern big market teams. Like, this, I think, is going to be a year without any New York baseball in the postseason.
Had a few weeks ago of everybody, it feels like, is underperforming.
Yeah. All of the expected favorites.
It's just, every other team feels like tries their prospects at some point. Like, they bring them up, they get them ready, and you know what, doesn't work, trade them away, failed prospect, whatever. You missed, move on. The Yankees just end up deciding that the holes in the roster cannot possibly be filled by guys who are question marks, and they need to be known commodities, even if the known bit is bad. Like, they don't want to risk anything.
Exactly.
They would rather know what they're getting from an old man who cannot run anymore, like Josh Donaldson or Giancarlo Stanton, then maybe try an Ezekiel Duran. Or, hey, you know what? Let's trade him away for Joey Gallo because we know what we're going to get out of him. Let's, all the young pitchers that we, whatever. Not the point. There's just, like, they don't, or, all right, perfect example, case in point, Esteban Florial. By the way, Harrison Bader is hurt. Just got that news.
Oh, cool.
He left the game tonight with a rib contusion. And, like, again, if this was 2 weeks ago, I would literally be screaming upset. I just don't care.
When it rains,
like,
it pours.
I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sad for Bader because I want to like him so bad, and I know he wants to be like a great Yankee, and he probably wants to win here more than anyone, and he wants us to love him, and I do just because he showed up in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, he did.
And I love him more than most of the guys on the team because of that. It's just such a shame because they're not going to bring him back because he can't stay healthy. And it's a posterior rib contusion.
Oh,
so I don't know what happened because we're not watching the game because I can't take it anymore. But it sounds like he got hit in the rib, maybe, or like he dove or something. I have no idea. But either way, you expect now maybe Pereira or Florial or something. I wouldn't be surprised if someone might make a trade tonight for, I don't know, like Grichuk or something. Like,
that's been it for this week. Hopefully it's the end of remote Mudville, but we've done a good job. That's been all. If you haven't already, toss us a 5-star rating and review. It helps us out a lot. If you've enjoyed this, check out our past 2 episodes. We put out quite a bit of content about the MLB draft, and we also talked to a couple of really fun guests.